Okay, comrades, friends, it's a pleasure for me to chair this session on global issues with a superb panel that will reflect on the questions that we got from the working groups. As you know, we've had 12 different working groups in this area. There have been one on the Arab Spring, one on the progressive approach to migration and development, one on global governance, reshaping international organizations for global challenges, one on EU enlargement, one on water, one on the food crisis, one on the fiscal paradises, tax havens, one on Africa and security and sovereignty in Africa, one on how to make trade work for small producers and workers, one on how to unite the EU to combat the climate crisis, one on the European Union policy on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and finally, one on responses to multiple crises, decent work and its essential elements, employment and workers' rights. So this is sort of everything you wanted to know about the world in 1 hour. We have 6 people to help us answer these questions. I would like to ask for apology in advance if there are still issues to be solved on the global scene after this panel is over, but we will do our very best. My name is Espen Barth Eide. I am a member of the presidency of the PES, and when I'm not that, I am Minister of Defense in Norway. With me, we have the Khalil Asaouya from the FDTL in Tunisia leadership. Thank you for being with us. We have the leader of the CHP of Turkey, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu. We have the Secretary General of the ITUC, Sharan Burrow. We have actually, you mixed places. We have Mr. Eamon Gilmore, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade and Labour Party of Ireland. We're also very pleased to have with us our comrade and friend and Director General of the World Trade Organization, Mr. Pascal Lamy. And also from Northern Europe, Nicolai Wammen, Minister of European Affairs of the Social Democratic Party in Denmark, and a recently appointed minister in a new government. And congratulations to you, and welcome to the club. Social Democrats are good in opposition and in government, but there's always something extra when in government, of course. Well, we have had the 12 working groups, and the idea now is that I will try to pick up themes that came out of some of these working groups, try to reflect them very quickly, one at a time, and then see how members of the panel would like to answer them. And I have told the members of the panel to try to speak frankly and to be sharp and crisp to the issue, and in order to have a good interaction between us, and then we'll see how it goes. And I would like to pick one of the groups which was on global governance and the reshaping of international organizations for global challenges, with work group 3. And maybe Pascal can help us to start here, because there is a discussion about whether the world is multipolar or non-polar. Everybody agrees that it is not bipolar any longer. It's not as in the disease, but as in the structure that we had in the Cold War. I think it's also widely understood that unipolarity and the leadership of the West and America is over. What do we have? Do we have a multipolar world? Or do we actually have a world where nobody is picking up the vacuum that was left when the old leaders left the scene, if I may say? And I think this is a rather important question for us all. And in many areas, in economic governance, in trade, and in security policy, who is going to take the lead? Who is going to shape the norms and institutions of the 21st century? And what is the role of progressive governance? And who is better to start answering that than Pascal Lamy, who's trying to do this on a daily basis? Pascal, please.
Well, it's a huge question, and I I would distinguish sort of medium and long term and short term. We had the G8, move to the G20. Short term, what we have is a G0. And that's the most worrying feature for me of the present crisis. This crisis is a crisis which affects everybody. It's a global crisis, it's a multilateral crisis, but we have another crisis within the crisis, which is a crisis of multilateralism. How do you govern the crisis? And these two crises feed each other. I'm traveling this planet northwise, southwise, eastwise all the time. What I see is people who are lost. There's no pilot in that plane. Markets are at random. They're asking for clear political signals of what's the way out. Maybe not tomorrow, but maybe the day after tomorrow. This is not happening. And the reason why it's not happening is in a way understandable. Leaders, politicians, are accountable to their own constituencies. The crisis is beating them. The priority has become, what do I have to do domestically to survive? By the way, very few of them survive when there are elections, which understandably is a worry for them. I attended the G20 in Cannes, and that was physically tangible. So we have a huge problem short term. We need national leaders to accept to devote a little bit of what's left of their political energy to coalesce and do things together. If they don't do that, the crisis will be worse, longer than it is. Now, medium and long term, my view on this and my experience on this is, in a way, rather simple. Global governance is about leadership, legitimacy, efficiency. And it cannot work like a national government where leadership, legitimacy, and efficiency are in the same hand of something which is called the government. I mean, a government, an administration, a parliament, a judicial system. Government in the sort of American sense of the term. Now, the international system cannot have these three elements in the same place. And the reality is that those who are legitimate are not good at legitimacy, at efficiency or leadership. Those who are good at leadership are not good at legitimacy or efficiency, and those who go to efficiency are not good in the two other places. So we have the G20 for leadership, weak legitimacy, no efficiency. We have the UN, great legitimacy. If you poll people worldwide and say, what's the institution you love best? The answer is UN from far. Let's say leadership, not really that, and efficiency, probably not also. And then, but it has a huge legitimacy. And then you have the rest, which are international organizations, where leadership is not that great because it's member-driven, and you know, we know what a member-driven car does. But they're not that legitimate because they're only governments interacting, but they are very efficient. So in a way, we have to combine this. And the question for us in our political family is, how can we influence this triangle best? Not just one bit of the triangle, but the three sides of the triangle. And I think there's a lot that can be done, including with parties, political parties, and civil society, if we understand that it's the three bits, the three sides of this triangle that we have to try and influence.
Thank you, Pascal. I think a crucial argument for social democrats and progressives is that we need politics on a global level, more than just coordination between national policies. And of course, still an important player in creating that is the European Union, and Denmark will take over the chairmanship. And Nick, where are you going in that respect? As a new government.
It is a new government in Denmark, and it's also a very crucial time in the European family right now. I certainly agree with Pascal that there is a lack of leadership on the global stage. And one of the institutions and one of the families that can provide leadership, if we want to, is of course the EU. And therefore the message from this meeting, and I believe also from the Danish presidency, should be that even though we are in the midst of a giant crisis within Europe, we cannot afford only to look inwards. We need also to have the global perspective. That goes, for instance, for the G20 meetings, where it is essential that the EU plays a strong role. And also that the G20 is actually a setting where not only the big EU countries, but also the smaller EU countries can contribute because of the representation of the EU in that setting. What I would like to see from the EU during this crisis and also in the years to come is an EU that punches accordingly to its political weight. Right now, it's the opposite. We are punching below our weight. And we must not, as I mentioned, let internal problems stay so much in our focus that we cannot engage in a wider scope. And of course, this meeting and our political family must also make it very clear that human rights, democracy, but also growth and job creation must be the centerpiece of the EU policy position, also in the global context, and also that we provide leadership from the EU when it comes to the climate situation and the environment coming up to the negotiations in Durban and also, of course, in Rio +20. So this is a chance for Europe, even though we are in the middle of a huge internal crisis, to play a stronger role on the international scene. But it takes leaders that wants to do that, and it also takes an effort by the incoming presidency, and we'll do our utmost to deliver that so that Europe can speak with a strong voice for human rights, for job creation, for the climate in the next 6 months and after that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicolai. It seems that the upcoming Danish presidency will pick up Pascal's advice to look beyond your own borders and remember the global arena. And I think the advice is crucially important because the EU has been inward-looking, the US is inward-looking, even China is preoccupied by solving its own internal problems, and their international politics seems to be highly guided by their immediate self-interest, as is true for many other countries. And if nobody looks beyond that, we're in trouble. Even Ireland is a committed multilateralist for ages, and also a devout European. How do you see this from your position, how we can connect Europeanism with the global governance approach?
I think the first difficulty is that politics and governance, I think, is playing catch-up. We're constantly saying we live in a global economy. Communications are global. Many of the challenges that face the world, like climate change, for example, is global. But we haven't developed a politics and a form of governance which has caught up with that. The vacuum, something fills the vacuum. And the problem at the moment in terms of economic governance is that the vacuum is being filled by the markets. Leaders in Europe wake up this morning and their immediate concern is not what the European Commission has had to say about them, or the World Trade Organization, or the IMF. They're worried about what Standard & Poor's has to say about them. And I think, until we manage to develop systems whereby we are effective governance systems on economic issues, we're going to be constantly victims and constantly responding to the markets and to bodies which are unaccountable, like, for example, the ratings agencies. I think that we do have to question, in relation to economic governance, I think the role of the G20. I mean, why the G20? I mean, why are we not talking? I mean, if we are, and we're a family here of people who believe in equality and development, and equality as between people in developing countries and developed countries, why are we not talking in a genuinely multilateral way about a much more democratic system of economic governance for the world? I think that is number one. I think there are a number of positive signs. I think the United Nations, for example, I think was strengthened in 2011. I think the role, for example, that it played in relation to the Arab Spring and the decisiveness in relation to Libya, and I know that there are critics of that, but it showed a leadership on the part of the United Nations, which I think is a very positive sign and something that can be built upon. I think that the European Union has also, I think, progressed very significantly. The European Union now, particularly since the establishment of the Foreign Affairs and the External Action Service, is now playing a much more active role in world affairs. And I think in particular, for example, the role that the EU and Catherine Ashton has been playing in relation to the Middle East peace process, I think, is showing a leadership role that the EU is playing, and similarly in relation to issues such as climate change and in the period leading up to Durban. I think we're also beginning to see the development of models in different parts of the world which appear to be modeled around the European Union. Groups of states coming together for economic cooperation in, for example, East Africa, South America, and again, I think we need to build on that. So I think there are some positive signs. The difficulty, of course, is that international institutions, as they are at the moment, it may be, Pascal, that people's first preference in terms of international organizations is the United Nations. But I think all of the international organizations need to be reformed, and we need to get a sense of connectedness between international organizations, including, incidentally, European Union institutions. One of the big problems, and we all know this from our political practice, how quickly and how easily government, even at a national level, can become remote from citizens and their wishes and their desires and so on. International organizations have an even bigger capacity to get remote from people, to become flabby, to become inefficient, and to become bureaucratic.
Just before we leave you for the moment, would you agree that one of the reasons that the EU has become rather unpopular is that national leaders often have used the EU as an argument for promoting unpopular policies?
Yes, I think that is true. I think I think that the European Union hasn't been internalized, I think, in the politics of countries, and yet at the same time, I think we all do understand the necessity to respond to issues at a European level. I also think that we need to do a little review, I think, on the way in which the institutions are working at present. I think that the shift in the locus of power to the council, I think needs to be looked at. I think we're seeing a shift away from the community approach, which many of us would have supported. And I think what is happening within that context is the emergence of kind of an informal, big country power center, which I think is going to be hugely damaging to the European Union. The European Union is a union of 27 member states. It's not a union of 2. And I think that we need to get back much, much more to this sense that it is 27 and that the leadership within the European Union needs to be on a much more collective basis rather than being driven by the leaders of 2 countries alone.
Thank you very much, Eamon. Let me move towards the other side here, and Sharan, as Secretary General of the Trade Union, International Trade Union Congress. Working Group 12 was working particularly on the issue of decent work and its essential elements, employment and workers' rights. And I think in several working groups, and also what I've already heard here, there is a reference to actors beyond the traditional actors when it comes to financial regulation and economic policies. And how do you, as a globally oriented trade union organization, foresee a way by which that the workers' interests are actually present when global decisions are being made? Sure.
Well, thank you. Let me just pick up on 2 points that have been made over here, with Pascal starting the debate. Frankly, I think the European Union is now just captive of the markets. Anyone who tells me that you can have a global oligopoly, 3 ratings agencies, Moody's, Standard & Poor's and Fitch, and that politicians, as they do, exactly wake up every day and say what's happening with the markets, not what's happening to my people, not what are we going to do to kickstart the economy around jobs, then I think you have to say, where is the economic authority? And the marriage of the ratings agency and the bond markets is, in fact, so dangerous that it's now absolutely able to create a run on sovereign debt overnight. We're not talking about them ranking corporations anymore. We're talking about creating a run on sovereign debt. That renders politicians almost totally powerless. Now, this doesn't have to be. I was struck by the courage of the Commissioner last week or the week before, who said he was going to regulate the ratings agency. Remember, the G20 promised that in 2009. Hasn't happened. And then what happened? Everyone else jumped on him. And I watched them repeat what the Moody's CEO had said, that this would damage the credit markets. Well, good. The credit markets aren't working for working people. But let me even be more provocative. I think in that context, the European Union has lost its moral authority. I speak from an outsider. I come from Australia. I now head up the global union movement. But we used to look to Europe and its social dialogue model as the way in which democracy could work. Instead, what do we have now? A group of countries that, when the deputies in Toronto after Pittsburgh and London, G20, when they promised never again would the financial industry be in charge of the real economy and that jobs would be at the heart of the exit from the crisis, they failed on both counts, and now we have an even more bitter crisis of unemployment and a whole generation of young people looking like they'll be excluded with slow or stagnant growth over the next 10 years. And what does Europe do? It not only races to austerity, it makes its own people now the victims of a war on labour rights. Yet the economic sense says, Economics 101, jobs, income-led growth from jobs and social protection. Indeed, that's the way. Workers in work. Income will drive demand and drive us out of the crisis. But do we have a coordinated strategy even in Europe for jobs? No. Denmark, I must say, I was delighted to hear your new Prime Minister. Fantastic. Kick-starting the economy. What a dream. But sadly, Denmark can't do it on its own. So, we say jobs, jobs and jobs. And I see Paul here in the front. We've had this conversation, but we're all going to head, some of us are going to head to Durban next week. And how depressing will that be? The European Union doesn't even have an ambitious leadership plan, when again we used to look to them for moral authority. But it's in their interest, because our research, preliminary as it is, it's for Rio plus 20, but shows that in 12 countries, if you put 2% of GDP, doesn't have to be government expenditure, can be facilitated or a carbon price or whatever, 2% a year of GDP over 5 years, guess what? You can have 55 million jobs in just 12 countries. That's what we want. So jobs, jobs and jobs, social protection, these are the way to get us out of the crisis. In fact, we would say, if you think to shrink is to grow is an oxymoron, well, you're right. And in terms of a tax on labour rights, I have to say to the governments, not just in the EU, but in the US, in Latin America, and indeed in Mexico, where the G20 will be next year, and Asia, an attack on labour rights is not on. We're actually bringing people together in 2 weeks to say we're drawing a line in the sand, and any government, any politician that thinks that attacking workers' rights to bargain collectively, to join unions, to have a decent minimum wage is the right way to go, well, you're no longer going to be on our Christmas card list.
Thank you so much, Sharan. And let me just add that I think the statistics and history is with you, because actually those countries in Europe that are doing best through the financial crisis have systematically strong trade unions, strong and well-organized employers' organizations that work together with a strong state, and strong welfare states which are market-friendly in the sense that they do allow change, but they also protect the people in change. And by the way, also the countries with the lowest gender gap in employment and in wages. So our story actually holds if you look at why the Nordic countries systematically perform somewhat better than the other countries, and that's a strong argument. And it's also a strong argument that the liberal textbook in America actually is wrong on these issues. Let me move to the south and east, and also to the left of this on this table from my perspective. Before I do that, I'll just remind you that you will need, those of you who are not fluent in Turkish or French would want to have one of these and turn them on. Channel 1 is English, Channel 2 is French, and so on. And they are out there if you haven't picked them up. I will start with Tunisia, Khalil. We were all very inspired with what happened in Tunisia over Christmas last year and this spring. There's no doubt about it. The Arab Spring started in Tunisia and also continued in a much more peaceful way, relatively speaking, in Tunisia compared to, obviously, your immediate neighbor, but also compared to Egypt, as we all see. But some are still asking the question, and maybe with the exception of Tunisia, is the Arab Spring becoming an Arab autumn and an Arab winter? Please.
Je pense que ce qui se passe en Tunisie va servir pour les autres pays. Tout à l'heure, M. Chaaf a dit qu'actuellement, dans le monde arabe, il y a une entente entre les sociaux-démocrates et les islamistes dans beaucoup de pays, et que cette entente-là, qui n'est pas un front ou une coalition, mais une entente pour gérer la période transitoire, est la meilleure solution pour faire instaurer une démocratie, un état de droit, et diluer tout ce qu'il y a d'islamiste dans ces partis à connotation religieuse. Je pense que les difficultés actuelles de l'Égypte sont tout à fait surmontables. Je ne suis pas au fait de ce qui se passe en Égypte, mais je pense que les Égyptiens, comme les autres pays arabes, vont pouvoir passer le cap et instaurer des élections démocratiques transparentes, avec un pouvoir qui sera certainement dominé par des partis à connotation religieuse dans une première phase, mais que les démocrates et les sociaux-démocrates vont certainement reprendre la place et être les leaders après la phase de transition. Ce que je voudrais dire, c'est que nous, en Tunisie et en général dans les pays arabes, la réussite de ce processus est tributaire de l'économie et du social. Et qu'aujourd'hui, notre pays, en Tunisie, on a sur une population de 10 750 000 chômeurs, c'est la difficulté majeure. Et ce que nous attendons de nos amis européens, c'est de nous aider. Je sais que les temps sont difficiles, mais qu'un secteur comme le tourisme, qui est capital pour un pays comme la Tunisie, doit être fortement soutenu par nos amis européens si on ne veut pas que la Tunisie s'enferme dans un autarcisme et des réflexes à l'iranienne. Et donc, on attend fortement votre soutien pour que cette période cruciale, d'ici 2 ans, puisse se passer dans des conditions très favorables pour que les sociaux-démocrates, qui sont très bien positionnés pour réussir. Aujourd'hui, les partis islamistes ont à peu près entre 20 et 25% de l'électorat. Mais vu notre mode de scrutin, ils arrivent à avoir 40% des sièges. C'est-à-dire que la difficulté n'est pas surmontable. Ils n'ont pas la majorité absolue. Ils sont encerclés par les forces démocrates. Le rassemblement des forces démocrates autour de la social-démocratie n'est possible que si la crise sociale et économique dans laquelle on vit est bien gérée et qu'on arrive à résoudre surtout le problème de l'emploi et du chômage. J'espère que cette politique de bon voisinage entre l'Europe et le monde arabe soit bâtie sur une prospérité partagée. Et la prospérité partagée, il faut qu'elle soit vraiment aidée par ceux qui sont les plus prospères pour que ceux qui sont dans la difficulté puissent se retrouver dans ce monde nouveau. Merci.
Thank you, Khalil, and it's so good to have you with us in this club with your current capacity and given the developments that we have seen in Tunisia over this last year, which inspires all of us. And I think you raised many of the questions that are paramount to all the countries that are now in transition. You know, how to manage the political future, also how to get economic growth. And obviously, your problem as well is the crisis in Europe, because I agree we should all go as tourists to Tunisia, but there are less tourists coming because people have less money, and there are less remittances coming because Tunisians in Europe have less access to work. And I would like you to say a little bit of how the international financial crisis and economic crisis affects you and your democratic development.
Le tourisme est très important en Tunisie. Il génère autour de 1 million d'emplois, ce qui n'est pas négligeable. Nous avons un tourisme de masse, donc un tourisme peu coûteux, contrairement au Maroc, qui est un tourisme plus élitiste. Et l'année dernière, nous avons accusé une perte de l'ordre de 50%. Nous restons quand même beaucoup moins chers que beaucoup de pays, beaucoup de régions d'Europe, et on espère que l'effort qui est en train d'être fait et que je comprends pour orienter le tourisme vers la Grèce qui est en difficulté majeure ne puisse pas nuire à la Tunisie et que nous ayons une bonne saison, d'autant plus que le département du tourisme va probablement revenir à notre parti dans le prochain gouvernement.
Well, that sounds good. Even another reason to go to Tunisia on vacation. The working groups 1 and 2 have both been dealing with the issues that you already commented on. I would then like to move to Kemal, the leader of CHP. And let me introduce by saying that one of the most interesting political developments that I have seen, at least over the last decade, is the re-emergence of the emergence of a new Turkey, which is more at peace with its history and more forward-looking in its political and economic agenda, and a country with a significant economic growth, far higher than the European standard, and with a new sense of role in the world over the last years. It's quite interesting that as long as Turkey, through its old Kemalist policies, tried to move to the West through authoritarian means, it actually became, in my view, more European when it sort of reconciled with its past and with its Islamic roots. I would very much like to hear two things from you. First, of course, your answer to the frequent argument that Turkey is the model that the Arab Revolution should take in order to avoid Iran, the Iranian model. And the second question is, how do we look from Ankara?
Teşekkür ediyorum. Önemli bir soru. Bölgemiz açısından da çok önemli. Sayın Pascal Lamy konuşmasını yaparken G8'den, G20'den söz ettim. Daha sonra da çok yönlü, çok taraflı bir krizle karşı karşıyayız dedim. Krizin Avrupa boyutu var, krizin gelişmekte olan ülkeler boyutu var. Tunus'ta Arap Baharı eylemini başlatan olay, üniversite mezunu bir gencin seyyar satıcılık yapması ve uzun süredir işsiz olması nedeniyle kendisini yakmasıyla başlıyor. Olaya böyle baktığımızda bizim tabloyu biraz daha farklı görmemiz gerekiyor. Arap Baharı dediğimiz bölgedeki krizle Avrupa'daki krizin farklı olduğunu düşünmemiz gerekiyor. Orada da ekonomik kriz var ama ekonomik krizin ötesinde Arap Baharı dediğimiz bölgede oluşan eylemlerde insan hakları, kadın erkek eşitliği, özgürlükler, medya özgürlüğü, bütün bunların büyük ölçüde yok olduğunu biliyoruz. Büyük ölçüde aksadığını biliyoruz. O zaman önümüzdeki temel sorun şu: Arap Baharı diye başlanan ve süren eylem beklenen sonucu verdi mi? Demokrasi ve özgürlükler konusunda önemli adımlar atıldı mı? Kadın erkek eşitliği sağlandı mı? Sağlıklı bir siyasal yapılaşma oldu mu? Bunu sorgulamamız gerekiyor. Hemen söyleyeyim, bu konuda sağlıklı bir gelişmenin olduğunu tahmin etmiyorum. Gelişmeler oldu, Libya'da da oldu. Az önce değerli bir konuşmacımız Libya'da Avrupa Birliği'nin önemli bir liderlik üstlendiğini de ifade etti. Ama hiçbir liderlik bir başka liderin linç edilme eylemine destek vermemeli. İkisi birbirinden farklıdır. Yargılayabilirsiniz, yargının önüne çıkarabilirsiniz ama bir lideri linç eder ve bunu alkışlarsanız bunun liderlikle falan bir bağlantısı da yoktur. Bunu da açık yüreklilikle ifade etmek isterim. Bir başka önemli nokta, Tunuslu dostumuz çok güzel bir şey söyledi. Eğer biz İran'a dönmek istemiyorsak, yani layık, demokratik, sosyal hukuk devleti olmak istiyorsak, çağdaş bir ülke olmak istiyorsak bizi yalnız bırakmayın dedi. Ve sayın konuşmacılar şunu çok iyi bilmeliler. O bölgenin, Müslüman bölgenin kendine özgü koşulları var. Kendine özgü zorlukları var. Din unsurunun oralarda nasıl siyasallaştığını bizim görmemiz gerekiyor. Bu sorun görülmeden, bu sorun sağlıklı tahlil edilmeden bölgenin sorunlarına çözümler üretmenin zor olduğunu da ifade etmek isterim. Avrupalılık bizim öteden beri çağdaş uygarlığı yakalamak için, Avrupa'nın değerlerini almak için mücadele ettiğimiz bir siyasal kültürden, bir siyasal partiden geliyoruz biz. Daha Avrupa Birliği olmadan biz kendi ülkemizin bağımsızlığını sağladığımızda gittik İsviçre'den medeni kanunu getirdik. Bize kimse zorla medeni kanunu getirin, Avrupa Birliği'nin kuralı budur diye söylemedi. Ama biz çağdaş uygarlık nedir? Kadın erkek eşitliği nedir? Demokrasi nedir? Özgürlükler nedir? Nasıl bir anayasa olmalı? Medya özgürlüğü nasıl olmalı? Biz bunun peşindeyiz. Ve bunu istiyoruz. Bunu arzu ediyoruz. Türkiye son dönemde parlak gelişmeler sağladı diyorsunuz. Doğrudur. Ama o gelişmelerin hangi bedeller ödenerek sağlandığını acaba tahlil ettik mi? Dünyada cari açıkta bir numarayız. Bu hiç sorgulanmıyor. Hapisteki gazeteci sayımız Çin'den daha fazla. Bu hiç sorgulanmıyor. Medya özgürlüğü yok. Bu hiç sorgulanmıyor. Efendim, Türkiye acaba Arap Baharı'nı yaşayan ülkelere rol model olabilir mi? Türkiye'de bana bu soru sorulduğunda verdiğim yanıt şuydu. Avrupa halkları, Arap halkları, affedersiniz, Arap halkları, Orta Doğu halkları Türkiye'deki yurttaşların yaşadığı gibi demokrasi gelişmiş bir ülkede yaşamak istiyorlar. Bizim halklarımıza özeniyorlar. Türkiye halkına özeniyorlar. Ama bizim yöneticilerimiz Arap yöneticilere, Orta Doğu yöneticilerine özeniyorlar. Daha baskıcı olalım, özgürlükleri sınırlayalım, medya özgürlüğünü ortadan kaldıralım. Bu gerçeğin bilinmesi lazım. Bu gerçek bilinmeden sağlıklı tahlil edilemez. Örnek vereceğim size. Rol model olacaksak basılmamış kitabın toplatılmadığı bir Türkiye'yi kurmamız lazım. Özgürlüklerin sonuna kadar kullanıldığı bir Türkiye'yi bilmemiz lazım. Üniversitelerin özerk olduğu, düşüncelerin özgürce dile getirildiği bir Türkiye'nin olması lazım. O zaman biz rol model olmalıyız. Müslüman bir ülkeyiz, ağırlıklı olarak nüfus yapımız gereği Müslüman bir ülkeyiz. Ama laik, demokratik, sosyal hukuk devleti olmak istiyoruz. Din ve devlet işlerini birbirinden ayırmak istiyoruz. Ve bu konuda önemli adımlar atmak istiyoruz. Ama tam tersine gelişmeler var. Bu gelişmelerin de çok iyi tahlil edilmesi ve bilinmesi gerekiyor. Bizim rol model olmamızı biz çok arzu ederiz. Demokrasi gelişmiş bir ülkede, özgürlüklerin geliştiği bir ülkede, medyanın özgürce düşündüğü, yazdığı bir ülkede elbette ki rol model olmak isteriz. Ve bu konuda da önemli adımlar atmak isteriz. Ama Türkiye bugün içinde bulunduğu koşullar gereği, özellikle siyasal koşullar gereği rol modeli olmaktan çok uzaktır. Hiçbir Orta Doğu halkı medya özgürlüğü sınırlansın, ben Türkiye'ye örnek alayım. Baskılar uygulansın, ben Türkiye'ye örnek alayım. Üniversiteleri konuşmasın, ben Türkiye'yi örnek alayım diye düşünmüyordur. Biz daha özgürlükçü, daha demokrat bir Türkiye istiyoruz. Herkesin özgürce konuştuğu bir Türkiye istiyoruz. Orta Doğu halklarında, Arap halklarında bizden daha baskıcı bir yönetimin olduğu gerçek. Özgürlük taleplerinin kısıtlanamayacağı da artık 21. yüzyılda bilinen bir olaydır, bilinen bir olgudur. Bizim de buradan yola çıkmamız lazım. Ve Avrupa Birliği olarak, Birliğin aday ülkesi olarak bizim şöyle bir sorunu ayrıca masaya yatırmamız lazım. Acaba Arap Baharı'nın meydana gelmesinde, eylemlerin yoğunlaşmasında Avrupa Birliği'ni oluşturan ülkelerin sorumlulukları yok mu? Son olarak Yunanistan'da yapılan Socialists internasyonel toplantısına Arap Baharı eylemlerine katılan gençler davet edilmişti. O gençlerden birisi kürsüye çıkıp aynen şunu söyledi. Biz eylem yaptık. Gençler yönetime gelsinler. Biz daha fazla söz hakkı sahibi olalım diye. Ama maalesef yine 80 yaşındaki insanlar geldi. Onlar bizi yönetiyor. Bu tablo hepimizi düşündürmeli. Teşekkür ederim.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kemal. I think this was very useful. I just refer the comment from the first the Arab Spring Group, number 1, which says that there has been a conceptual shift from Iran to Turkey. Social democrats need to form consensus with moderate Islam so as not to be dominated by dictators again, or that the countries should not be dominated by dictators again. I think it's important that we get the two sides of this, and of course also that we are reminded that Turkey is also still in political development itself. And I think you made that clear. Thank you. Do you want to add something?
Sayın Başkan, şu yanlışa düşmekten de özenle kaçınmamız gerekiyor. Ilımlı İslam diye bir kavram yoktur. Bu kavram belli literatürde yer alıyor, belli yerlerde söyleniyor ama sonuçta eğer biz laik bir devleti oluşturacaksak, elbette ki herkesin inançlarına saygılı olacağız. Elbette ki herkesin etnik kimliğine saygılı olacağız. Ama dini siyasette belli bir dozda kullanmak olarak eğer ılımlı İslam'ı adlandırıyorsak bu doğru bir yaklaşım değildir diye düşünüyorum.
Okay. I was just referring the text from the working group. In my country, we have a Christian People's Party, and a few decades ago, they were more or less like the what you know as the AKP, but just that they were Christians rather than Muslims. So this happens around the globe. We've been in one full round. We have some more minutes. I would like to mention that there was a working group on water as tomorrow's most strategic resource. There was a working group on the food crisis, tackling speculation, and there was a working group of climate. We haven't sort of addressed that, so you may want to pick up some of that in your further comments. It was Nicolai first.
Yes, I would like to make a few comments to our friends from Tunisia and also from Turkey. First of all, I believe that the EU and Europe owes it to the young people of Tunisia and the Arab Spring who gave their lives to promote freedom and democracy that we do not leave them behind now. And that means that the EU must play a very important and active role in supporting the democratic forces of the Arab Spring. That means that we have a moral obligation, that means that we have a democratic obligation, and of course we also have a self-interest in having a friendship and also a working relationship based on these values. That is also why one of the tasks of the new Danish EU presidency will be, and I'm looking very much so forward to this, to open up trade negotiations with Tunisia during the Danish presidency, to say this is not just nice rhetoric, this is also something we do in the real world. And concerning Turkey, we want during the Danish presidency to bring forward the dialogue and the negotiations with Turkey. We know we have a long road ahead of us, and we also would like to emphasize from the Danish presidency that it is extremely important, as Kemal mentioned, that Turkey lives up to the standards when it comes to freedom of press and democracy. We want, when Turkey is ready and when Turkey is saying yes to membership, to have Turkey as a part of the EU. But we certainly also want that Turkey, before doing that, has acknowledged that reform must be made when it comes to, for instance, freedom of the press. So you have the full support of the Danish presidency, both of you, and we are looking forward to work with you in the next months ahead of us. Thank you.
Nicolai, that applause was for what you said, but I think also for the pleasure that we all feel by having you back after 10 years out in the dark, after Paul left or was not allowed to continue as Prime Minister. It's so good to have a progressive government in Denmark, and that it is now taking over EU presidency. That's going to be tough, but very, very important. Comment from Khalil?
J'ai voulu vous remercier, d'autant plus que l'Union européenne a créé une task force pour la Tunisie qui est chargée de renégocier l'accord de partenariat et d'améliorer les conditions de ce partenariat. Et un gros chapitre de cet accord concerne l'agriculture et l'ouverture des deux marchés sur les produits agricoles pourrait nous poser des problèmes, comme la politique agricole commune pose un problème en Europe. Il faudrait vraiment faire attention et nous comptons aussi bien sur la présidence danoise que sur la présidence de cette task force qui est présidée par un social-démocrate espagnol pour mener à bien ces négociations. Voilà. Merci.
Thank you very much, Eamon.
Yes, I just wanted to follow on from Nicolai. One of the, I suppose, one of the things that we worry about at the PES is the extent to which there are now very few Labour or Social Democratic parties either in government or leading government within the European Union. We're now a very small group. But happily in this case, Denmark will be entering into the presidency of the European Union at the beginning of next year. And as it happens, Ireland will have the presidency at the beginning of 2013, and Cyprus is in between. And therefore we will have a period, I think, of continuity, certainly at the Foreign Affairs Council and at the General Affairs Council, where the leadership will be provided by Social Democratic ministers. And I think on issues relating to the support that we provide to the countries of North Africa, the way in which we approach the whole issue of enlargement, I think that we will see a consistency of approach and an openness as far as our policy positions are concerned. And finally, as it happens next year, I know it's not an organisation that gets a lot of discussion these days, but the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe, which stretches from Vancouver to Vladivostok. Ireland will hold the chair of that next year, and that organisation has an important role in supporting the building of democracy and the building of capacity in civil society, and we'll be very happy to support you and the work that you are doing in that respect.
Well, I mean, that's a very good reminder that the Social Democrats actually are in power more than we sometimes think. And Pascal, of course, is in the WTO.
Deux remarques sur ce qui a été dit. En redisant un mot de cette crise globale, qui est à la fois une crise financière, économique, donc sociale, et une crise de gouvernance de la crise. Je crois que c'est grave et que l'absence de pilote collectif empire cette crise, qui devient de plus en plus grave. Et je ne parle pas là en européen, que je ne suis plus d'un certain point de vue, mais en regardant la planète entière sur le plan économique et social. Et cette crise de gouvernance, cette incapacité à pondre et à matérialiser des accords, elle ne date pas de la crise, elle a existé avant. Le grand moment de la coopération internationale, le dernier grand moment de la coopération internationale, c'était le milieu des années 90. Hein. C'était le protocole de Kyoto, c'était l'Euro Round. Depuis, il ne s'est pas passé grand-chose. D'abord parce que l'émergence d'un certain nombre de pays en développement oblige à revoir complètement les règles du jeu international et que tout ça prend du temps, c'est incroyablement visqueux, ossifié, bureaucratisé. Et la crise qui est survenue, en augmentant en quelque sorte le différentiel de puissance entre les pays développés et les pays émergents, rend ce réaménagement encore plus compliqué. C'est vrai en matière de négociations commerciales internationales, chacun le sait, c'est vrai en matière de changement climatique. Comparons les espoirs qui étaient les nôtres il y a 5 ou 10 ans et ceux que nous avons pour la conférence de Durban. C'est vrai en matière de coordination des politiques macroéconomiques, c'est vrai en matière de coopération, en matière de change. Ça, c'est grave et c'est un problème majeur. Et il est vrai que la crise européenne, en ce qu'elle absorbe pour des raisons européennes de l'énergie politique européenne, fait que la voix de l'Europe sur ces sujets est aujourd'hui faible et ténue. Deuxième remarque, si on cherche à voir comment en sortir à terme, je pense que les forces progressistes ont évidemment à proposer des réponses, à articuler des réponses théoriques, doctrinales, et puis ensuite à articuler les rapports de force qu'il faut pour les faire passer, et que ceci doit nous obliger collectivement à sortir du cercle que nous connaissons bien, qui est au fond celui de ceux qui sont autour de cette table. Hein? Il n'y aura pas de progrès dans cette gouvernance dont nous avons besoin globalement sans associer des forces progressistes avec lesquelles, sérieusement, honnêtement, nous ne travaillons pas. Le Parti du Congrès indien, le Parti communiste chinois, le Parti des travailleurs au Brésil, nous ne travaillons pas assez avec eux. Et j'ai suffisamment d'indépendance personnelle pour dire, je l'espère sans choquer personne, que l'internationale socialiste n'est pas le creuset de cet effort à la fois théorique et tactique dont nous avons besoin. C'est quelque chose qui ne nous sortira pas de la crise. Nous ne réglerons pas cette question la semaine prochaine ni dans un mois, mais si nous ne travaillons pas sur cette question, alors tous les beaux discours sur le thème « c'est les marchés qui gouvernent cette planète » et je les partage en grande partie, alors tous ces beaux discours, si nous n'avons pas en face de ça des coalitions de forces globales capables de peser sur ces forces globales, alors nos discours resteront lettres mortes. Et sur ce point, je crois que c'est une espèce d'appel à l'action pour les socialistes européens, qui sont probablement d'ailleurs ceux qui, de ce point de vue-là, ont les idées les plus larges, pour qu'enfin, des coalitions de ce type puissent se bâtir.
Thank you very much, Pascal, for that very important reminder. We're almost at the end now. I will give Sharan a final word, and I did remind her that Working Group 9 also mentioned trade for small producers and workers. If you could say a few words at the end here.
I have one request and one suggestion. The first request is when Denmark leads the discussions with Tunisia, or indeed any of our North African colleagues, there's something you can do immediately. There are thousands of European companies. We've added them up. I can tell you how many from each of the countries in Tunisia. If they each were supported by the EU to take an apprentice or two or an intern or two tomorrow with ODA for wage incentives, you do something about kick-starting some hope for those young, educated Tunisians who started the revolution and for whom our unions are standing up with progressives around policy. So I would ask you to make trade discussions inclusive and on a new model. Let's not see Denmark fall into the trap of a trade model that works for the big multinationals and not for the small producers and for the workers. If you actually have a will to get the formal economy going, to turn around the informal economy that's growing in every country, then you can do it with progressive trade policy. But for goodness sake, talk to some social partners about this, and I know you will. The suggestion is exactly where Pascal left off. Frankly, you know, the IS, reinvent it. Do something. We have no global progressive voice, none. The union movement has a global voice, and we want a partner, and we don't have one. And so can I make a very interesting suggestion? Not a conference of 2,000, but if you want to really show up leaders that you don't support and we don't support, and come up with a global coordination plan for employment, for secure jobs, secure income, leading the way that Norway talked about the economies with regulated markets and social protection that work, then bring together your 50 best thinkers across the progressive forces globally and indeed your social partners, and let's get a plan that we can all support.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sharan, and thanks to all of you. We have to bring this to a close. We delivered on 1 hour. We were a quarter late, now we're a quarter over, but we'll still leave it there. But I want to end by saying we did not specifically address water, food, or climate, but we still did, because what Pascal and others were referring to about global goods and global good governance is, of course, equally important for those sectors as for the financial regulations and so on. And the inputs from the working groups will be used in further work in the PES on programs and so on. And let me also say that what the final point that was so eloquently made by Sharan and Pascal about our global institution was exactly the way we concluded in my working group as well on global institutions, where thanks to Johan Hassel from UC, the argument was made that this group may not be able to change the UN, the G20, the World Bank, the IMF, a little bit different from the World Trade Organization, but all these institutions overnight. But what we can do is to make sure that our alliance works and that we have a strong global set of partners, the Indians, the Brazilians, the Turks, the Indonesians, the Africans. There's a lot of progressive governance out there, more than we think, because many of the emerging countries are currently run by progressive democratic governments. Look at Brazil. More democracy and more growth and more distribution came together. Look at Indonesia, same thing. So our model actually has appeal outside of Europe. So where are they in our deliberations? I think that is a very good way to conclude. Let's at least get our own story right. Let's make some common ground with all the progressive forces out there, and let's take what we heard today with us in that pursued. Thank you for your presence here, and thank you for the attention.